In the VM host rules section, there is an element, however, which is on the vSphere Foundations exam. This is what is called an orchestrated restart for HA, and it allows us to make sure that VMs come up in the right order. For example, we start the database server before we start the front-end app servers. Sometimes what you will have is your application server will not operate properly if it can't communicate with the database when it starts. Of course, the database server, the SQL services on it take a lot longer to start. So if HA restarts the VMs at exactly the same moment, chances are the app server is going to start before the database is ready. So I'm just going to go back to my host groups, and I'm just going to delete the VM group I created, and I'll create both of these groups that I created for my little demonstration. And we're going to create a VM group. So I'm going to call this vCenter, and all I'm going to put into it is the vCenter virtual machine. I'm going to create a Windows 10 group, and I'm going to put my Windows 10 virtual machine into it. So I've now got two groups. Back in host rules, we click add, and we have this virtual machines to virtual machines group that I conveniently stepped over. So I'm going to call this an orchestrated restart group rule. So logic would dictate that the top box is the group we want to start first, and the bottom box is the group that we want to start second. It's actually the other way around. It's rather odd wording in the console here. So the VM dependency restart condition must be met before continuing to on restart for VM group in the bottom there. So what we're saying is when we restart this VM group, we need to wait for the restart condition to be met before we move on to this group. Now, I want to make sure that my vCenter server is started before my Windows 10 VM in the event of a HA condition. This is, of course, just for the purposes of this demonstration. If I try to drop down that bottom box, you'll notice the vCenter isn't there. It's because it's already set in that top box. So when we have two groups like this, I just need to change that one to Windows 10, and the bottom one changes. So when we restart the vCenter group, we need to wait for the restart condition. Remember that setting of, do we wait for the resources to be allocated? Do we just power on the VM and say that's enough? Or do we wait for the app to start responding? So that's that restart condition. So we're going to start the vCenter VM. We're going to wait until that restart condition has been met, and then we're going to restart the Windows 10 VM. I have had an error there though, and the reason for that error, I've already set my vCenter to be the highest tier. So you can't have that chaining rule between tiers, because actually the vCenter box is higher in priority than the Windows 10 VM. So it is going to start first anyway. I'm going to remove that override, and I'm going to add my rule again just to show how that works. So we want orchestrated restart. And that's now let us create the rule. If I now try and create that same override again, we'll see that it won't let us because there is that conflict. Essentially, they're both going to have the same effect in this scenario, but it won't let us use VM host rules, which are across tiers, across priority tiers, because the two features are similar